Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Misty Crypto, spreading crypto adoption, showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Gen Z needs to be included, it's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, SD, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z, about to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Misty Crypto, I'm never backing down, I got a wax account, you should check it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count, and I'm only getting started. Yeah, I'm barely off the ground. Misty Crypto, you cannot stop me. My exclamation diamond, your hands more like origami. Never be the boss of me. Bitcoin's all I need. When I say I'm zesty, that's just me talking honestly. Crypto and yum bomb marketplace. I wanna see the more. We gotta go through cyberspace. Leave this world without a trace. Say pay for a different day, 'cause we partners in the cryptos didn't stay.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Miss Teen Crypto Show. I hope everybody is having a lovely Monday. We are kicking off the week with quite the spicy guest. But before we jump in, if you're new to the channel, hey, what's up? Welcome. My name's Miss Teen Crypto. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and share this stream out with friends so more people could come and hang out and feel today's spice. If you're feeling cool, you're enjoying the love and the light in the chat, please say hello. Welcome, friends in the chat. I always much appreciate you guys. Before we jump in, I'm going to say thank you to our sponsor, Wax Blockchain, killing the game as usual. I have a Wax NFT right here. Make sure you guys go scan that, have fun, claim it. I'll drop some more throughout the show, but again, make sure you like and make sure you comment. Stay in tune with the chat. Everyone's very nice here. But let's jump in. Let's talk to our very spicy guest today, none other than Mike Alfred. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I'm a fan. You always say what you want. You always speak your mind. And I think more people need to learn from you in that aspect, that you just need to say what the facts are. You're not scared of anybody. You're just doing you. So right off the bat, much respect to you. But I really want to get to know you, Mike, because I feel like, there's a lot of layers to you, man. There's a lot to learn. You're very insightful on many different things. But, let's go back to like college Mike Alfred. What did you want to do with your life? What was your majors? What did you want to do?
Well, I mean, I went to Stanford, right? I was a history major. So I love to read. I could read thousands of pages in a week. One time I even sat down and read a book, a 1,000-page book in one sitting. This was before the internet was really big, and
the attention span.
Yeah, this was like junior year in high school or whatever, and I was just like a different person, that I could just absorb materials and there was no distractions whatsoever. So I'm just like a information processing machine, basically. I like large volumes of information, and then my skill was always I could take all that information and condense it down into like 1, 2, or 3 kind of key learnings, right? Or key consistent themes that filtered throughout. And I found that to be really helpful in investing and building companies, et cetera. So I studied history, but right out of school, I went right into like managing money, investing, helping people invest, right? And through that process, I discovered that there was an opportunity to create a software company that would help people with their 401k plans. So 401k plans are these, retirement plans that most people in the US have. You contribute money from your paycheck, but your employer basically decides what goes in those plans. And I just thought that wasn't fair. I thought that, we should have more control over what funds are in there, what the fees are, et cetera. And I said, the only way to hold these companies responsible is to publish a rating of every single 401k plan in America, which would then force these big companies to make their plans better for employees. And so that was like my first company. That was Brightscope. I founded that in 2008, built it up to like 70 or 80 employees, over 10 million in recurring revenue, and then sold it to private equity in 2016, which was kind of my first liquidity event. And then I did it again. Right after that, I did another startup called Digital Assets Data, which is like data for crypto companies, right? So like hedge funds, like Paradigm and Polychain and Pantera. And so I was selling data to crypto hedge funds. And that's when I kind of got pulled into learning more about Bitcoin, learning more about Ethereum, and trying to understand what was going on in the space.
Whoa. So you went from being a whole historian to being like, okay, I'm going to jump into finance, software. That's a big turn. When you were like reading every day, absorbing all this information about history, what stuck out to you about history that like, what really drew you to that? Why did you want to learn about our past?
Well, I mean, there's so many reasons, but I was reading an article in my Stanford alumni magazine last night about the value of a liberal arts education. And there's a lot of backlash right now about going to college, right? Which I generally agree with. Like, I generally agree questioning a very expensive education. But the point of this article made it very clear that, like, if you go to a place like Stanford and you get a liberal arts degree, the whole purpose of it is to become an interesting person, right? It's not to learn how to be a plumber or learn how to be a doctor or a teacher or anything specific. It's more to just learn to be broadly well read, to know a lot about a lot of things, to be a good conversationalist, and to generally kind of pursue happiness and questions that interest you in life. And that's exactly what I did. Without even really thinking about it, I took a leave of absence my sophomore year from Stanford, and I just bought an old white van. It was like $1,000 van, and I drove it from San Diego to Panama. Wow. Over like 3 or 4 months, like surfing the entire west coast of Baja, like mainland Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. So I was like a 19-year-old kid driving around in Central America in my own van, just sleeping on the beach, surfing. I sold the van and went to Cuba for 10 days and I was a pretty good musician back then. So I played in a rooftop like jazz fusion band that I just walked up and started playing with them. And they had me back a couple nights in a row. Went down to Ecuador and Peru, kept surfing. Did the same thing in Asia too, within that same period of time. Like, I went to India, Nepal, and I was like riding around on a camel in the desert in Rajasthan, like near Jaisalmer and near the border of Pakistan. And like, I just did a lot of stuff like that. And so for me, it was always like this iterative process, right? Sort of like when you're playing music, you can either like read sheet music and play something that's really structured, or you can improvise. I always like, hey, let's just jam in the key of A, right? And just sort of generally lead me in the right direction. I'll play lead guitar over it, right? And so that's the way I view life too, which is just the more structure you try to put over it, the less fun it is, and actually the less you can actually accomplish. For me, I need a very limited amount of structure to be successful, and I'll find my own way and I'll just sort of improvise as I go.
Yeah, I like that sense of independence that you have, that you at 19, literally my age, were like, okay, I'm going to dip out of here for a little while. I'm going to go drive, surf, and really explore things. Were your parents supportive of this? Like, you traveling around at such a young age? Were you scared on this journey, especially at the start, starting your own kind of life, I guess?
It started earlier. I mean, at 15 years old, I convinced my mom to send me the Berklee College of Music 5-week summer program in Boston on Boylston Street. So I was running around at 15 years old on Newberry Street in Boston in the Back Bay by myself at like 2 a.m.
That's incredible.
I had a couple other kids between 15 and 18. Most of the people were a little older in that program, but I called home once a week. I didn't have a cell phone. So I just get on the payphone and I call home and I say, hey mom, things are going well. I'm enjoying my jazz fusion class, et cetera, whatever. And so that's just always been my thing. I don't like structure. I don't like rules. Like, send me as far away as possible and leave me alone. And it turns out that kind of way of thinking helps in business. The more fearless you can be about taking risk, trying new things, not asking like, hey, how do I do what somebody else did, but how do I do something I've never seen anyone do before? I didn't know anyone who had bought a van and drove to Panama, so I figured it might be a good thing to try. Right. And so that was just something that I did. Same thing at Stanford. I took directed reading. I still to this day have never met anyone else take this course. It's in like the course handbook, but I didn't know anyone else who did it. And it's literally just, you sit with a professor for like 3 hours a week and talk about books. And so I would read a book or two in that week, and then I'd go sit with the professor and chat. And that's how I discovered Angkor Wat back in 2000. I think it was 99, 2000. I went to Angkor Wat in Cambodia because my professor, my South Asian professor, Mark Mancall, was a history guy back in those days. He said, hey, Mike, you got to go check out, based on our discussions, you would really enjoy Angkor Wat. I'm like, what's Angkor Wat? He's like, it's in Cambodia. You got to go. And I think this was before Tomb Raider and like some of these movies kind of showed these temples, but I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I have a picture of me in front of the main temple at Angkor Wat with nobody else on the walkway. If you try to go there in the last 15 years, there's like hundreds of people. You cannot get a photo of this thing without hundreds of people. I've seen everybody else try. Even if you go first thing in the morning, and a lot of that just like, I had never heard of it, and this professor knew about it. And there's a lot of things like that. Same thing with the eastern part of El Salvador. That's one of the best places in the world to surf. It's called the Wild East. Ooh. When I went in 2000, 2001, there was like nobody there. I surfed this right point break by myself for like 3 days with no one there. And since then it's gotten really crowded. Every time I see photos of it, there's like 100 people at this beach called El Cuco in El Salvador. So you only find those real nuggets when you're willing to do what no one else is doing.
Exactly. And when you were surfing, I know the surfing is a consistent part of your story. What draws you to the water? Because a lot of people are very scared to surf. They're afraid to even go in the ocean. But I think people have some sort of connection with the water. I think, when you're out in the ocean or just even sitting on the beach, you kind of feel that.
Yeah, surfing's an incredible sport. I mean, I just fell in love. I lived at the beach, right? I lived in Del Mar growing up in San Diego. And so surfing is just something that you have a choice whether you want to do it. And I just gravitated towards it. And I got quite good up until maybe early 20s. And then at some point I plateaued. And then I discovered ultramarathon running, right? And so I started running half marathons, then 50 milers, then 100 milers.
Ooh.
And at some point I realized I enjoyed running in the mountains more than I enjoyed surfing. And over the last, call it 10 or 15 years, I transitioned from a guy who used to surf like almost every day to somebody who runs every day. And the nice thing about running is like you can run in any temperature, any weather condition. It can be snowing, it could be raining, it could be hot, it could be cold. Surfing is very temperamental. You could buy a ticket and go to Hawaii. And if you make the mistake of going in the summertime to the North Shore of Hawaii, where there are world-class waves in December and January, it's completely flat like a lake and you might as well go fishing, right? And so surfing, the challenge I had with it is there's only so much time in life. And I realized that I was spending too much time waiting for good conditions, good waves, good tides, good wind conditions, etc. Whereas with running, I just throw my shorts on and I start running up a mountain. I could do it 365 days a year. I don't waste any time. And I found that I was just as fascinated with the mountains as I was with the ocean. And so look, life's a journey. It's a transition. And so one of the things I've been pretty good at is getting super passionate about something, whether it's surfing or ultramarathon running or guitar or finance and investing, but then I'm able to completely like walk away from it when I no longer care about it. A lot of people hold on. They're like, oh, you were so good at guitar. How come you don't play anymore? It's like, well, I just don't want to. But a lot of people feel like because they got to a certain level in guitar, they have to keep playing guitar. And I kind of got better at releasing that. I just release everything immediately. And then I have plenty of extra energy for whatever I'm fascinated by next.
That's really great. I think, just being able to let go of things is very important. And I think that, kind of stems from your like early life independence where you're just like, okay, I can move from place to place. I don't really have to worry. You just like have your own like kind of mind. And I really adore that. Like that's just very courageous. And do you meditate at all? Because I feel like you could like running is kind of like you're thinking a lot, but like actually sitting down and just like chilling.
So I've done meditation before. It's like always on my list of something I need to do more. But I think candidly, when you do the type of running that I do, you end up meditating
exactly
sort of accidentally. Because I never run with headphones, right? I do very long runs, sometimes in the mountains, usually by myself, because most people don't want to go to 13,000 feet with one water bottle, right? And just their shorts. I like to go fast and I like to go high. And so I ended up usually doing those things by myself. And so during hours alone in the mountains, you end up, if you're running well, you end up getting yourself into a meditative state where you're only sort of aware of your breathing, your footfalls, the sounds that you're hearing over in the trees over there, the sound of the brook that's running by the trail. And so you just start to filter out all of the other noise and just be fully present for each step of that run. And so I think I'm getting a meditation in sort of every day. Through the back door. I'm sure I could do better and actually add, structured meditation to it. But again, back to like who I am, like, I don't think I would like meditation as much if I was sort of forced to do it.
I agree.
Using some sort of structure, like every day, same time, same program, same breathing exercises. I like to find my own sort of form of meditation in the mountains.
I feel that 100%. And just a lot of people have their everyday kind of laid out for them and nothing like really changes. But for you, you've gone through massive amounts of changes, whether that's like, you in college being a historian, being really into history. And then after that, going into investing and things like software. Where did this all come from for you? Like stepping out of college, you were studying history. And then where did things kind of shift for you?
Well, I was actually helping individuals invest, right? So for a few years after school, I was sort of a traditional financial advisor, right? So helping with financial planning and insurance and investments. And, I started trading stocks in my dorm room years early. So it was very tactile for me. It wasn't like, hey, I learned this in a book.
Exactly.
This is what you do. It was more like, hey, I made a lot of mistakes in the tech bust in, March 2000. And so I have a lot I can teach you about how to avoid making those same type of mistakes. And so in the process of helping people kind of manage their money, I realized that there was no sort of rating system for 401k plans. And so created a rating system for 401k plans, built that business up and sold it. And so since then, it's been very organic. It's just, so there's been the thread of investing that's been my whole life, like 25 years of interest in it. But then I keep starting little things and selling them also on the side, right? And so at this point, though, my day is very unstructured, right? I'm on a few boards. So there might be a board call or like a board meeting every month or two. I go to a few events every year, usually related to financial services or investing or Bitcoin. But otherwise, like a lot of days, I just wake up and I kind of check the market. I take my dog for a walk or a run, right? I grab lunch. I got Chipotle today. For whatever reason, I can't help but get Chipotle. That's one investment I really messed up on, by the way, because I was watching it very closely in 2018 when it bottomed, and I was waiting for it to go. I had a limit buy at 200. It went to 250 and bounced, and now whatever it is, 1800 or something. That was one of the biggest mistakes of the last 4 years because it's actually something I was paying attention to.
Freaking Chipotle.
But yeah, unstructured days are the best, and not everybody does well in that environment. But for me, I don't like it if I have like 10 calls in a day. You know, like if you wake up in the morning, you have a call at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8:30, 9, 10. That's how most executive schedules are structured, by the way. And it's like, it's for me, it's soul crushing.
Yeah.
I can't think broadly. I can't be creative. I can't read something randomly that's interesting to me. I can't follow some thread that I want to follow because I've got to get on the next call with somebody to talk about something specific. So I've been really resisting doing any calls at all unless they're absolutely necessary, except for like the stuff I have to do in the, you know, context of me being a board member.
You know, now that I think about it, I think a lot of people, why they become so unhappy, especially maybe 40 years old, 50, is because they work 9 to 5s their entire lives and they don't have any room to breathe. Especially, I'm watching it now, being that I graduated high school. I watched a lot of my friends and whatsoever, cousins, go to college, finish college. Like, you don't have any room between high school and college to breathe and think about what you want to do with your life. Then on top of that, once you get out of college, you're in debt. So you have to, unless you're fortunate enough to pay for it, and you're in a bubble where you're like, okay, now I have to go work, and you can't even figure out what you're passionate about because you're thinking about the bills on your desk now. So now you're just stuck into this 9 to 5 world for the rest of your life, paying back loans and then worrying about 401ks and your retirement. It's that maybe that's why people go crazy, is because their life is too structured. Yeah.
And, you know, there's something nice about being 18 or 15 or 22 or whatever, because it does, you probably feel this right now. You'll probably agree with this, but it feels like most of the important things that are going to happen in your life are still ahead.
Yeah.
Right. And at some point, as you get older, it flips and you realize that a lot of the really cool things and important things, like getting married or having a kid or graduating from college or whatever, have already happened. And so what happens is, like, you spend so much of your life delaying gratification and preparing for some future, some hypothetical future that might be coming. But then if you're not careful, one day you wake up and you're 40 or you're 45 or you're 50. And if you didn't follow your heart, you didn't do pursue the dreams that you had, you realize, shit, like, it's probably too late. And so that's why you see people sometimes who look like they're losing their minds at 45 or 50. It's because they woke up, they had that realization that they had sort of put off doing what they really wanted to do, and they got stuck at some life that they weren't really that interested in. And this is like their last ditch attempt to try to find a way to get back to something meaningful or something real or something exciting or something that makes them happy. And I've decided from the very beginning, even when I was 15, 16, 18, that I wasn't going to do that at all.
Yeah.
Right. If I made money, I was going to have to do it my own way. If I didn't make money, so what? But I was going to take a lot of risk. I was going to drive around Central America. I was going to go to India. Right. I was going to learn how to play guitar. I was going to surf a lot. I was going to go take long vacations in the mountains. I was going to go to Chamonix. I was going to go to Patagonia and Iceland and China and Russia. Right. I wanted to go everywhere. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to eat and drink and be merry. And I saw a lot of kids that were at Stanford with me, and they're like, no, I got to finish this program so I can do this program. And then after this program, I got to do this. And those people were very uninteresting. And some of them haven't even really been that successful. So if you're going to make the trade-off of being an uninteresting, boring person who's always going from A to B to A to B in life, then, you know, like, just be aware that you may wake up someday, and if you're not successful, you're not going to really have anything to show for that. So,
Wow. Deep. Deep, deep, deep. That was great. I think a lot of people need to hear that. I think, especially I talk to people like Didi Taihutu, from the Bitcoin family that just like picked up and left and just started living this unstructured lifestyle with his family, just living off of Bitcoin. And I think a lot of people need to kind of do that a little bit. I got a massive amount of negative energy when I decided to not go the traditional route of college and then working that 9 to 5 and doing something traditional. And now I'm doing this, something that's completely, new, I guess. And you've been working and looking into finance for a long time, especially being a teenager, which still, speaking as a teenager, not a lot of kids do. Did you, looking into finance at such a young age, did you see anything in the markets that you were just like, something isn't right here, especially leading up to your journey finding Bitcoin?
well, look, that's a long question, right? What I tell you is I lived through some really insane swings, right? So like if you think back to the late 1990s, tech stocks and internet stocks were moving around like shit coins were moving around in 2017.
Yeah.
Right. It was like the most surreal thing ever. You'd buy something and go up 300% in like a few months. Right. And some of these things have no earnings. They have very little revenue, et cetera. And so that was my introduction. Like I first discovered markets at a time of extreme excess. And so one of the mistakes I could have made is to believe that markets are always like that. I did not have any sort of perspective to realize that was an unusual time frame. But when 2017 came around, I did, right? Because I had learned from 1999, 2000, right? Like 18 years earlier, I had seen what happens when a bubble like pops. And so, it's hard when you start out, when you're young, like you can get lucky, but the reality is it takes time and wisdom. It only comes from being in the markets, paying attention for long periods of time. You start to develop pattern recognition. You start to notice things that are the same and things that are different along different cycles. And so, Bitcoin to me at first looked like the dot-com bubble. And so I mostly dismissed it. Like I probably should have bought a little bit in 2012 or 2013, the first time people started talking about it with me, but it felt like a bubble. And it did. It went from $200 to $1,000 and then plummeted all the way back down to $200. And so at least temporarily, it looked like that was the right call. And then it did again. It went up to 20,000 and back down to 3,200 or whatever. And so that's just sort of the pattern. But the way Bitcoin trades is not the same thing as the fundamentals of Bitcoin. And that's where I really had to like remove those, extrapolate, right? I had to like think through what is Bitcoin fundamentally versus the way it trades. Because if you just look at the way it trades, it looks a lot like a dot-com stock from the late 90s. It looks like something that's eventually going to go to zero.
Even still, do you still think that now? The way Bitcoin trades?
Look at all the traditional people on Twitter, like a lot of the not fintech, but like FinTwit, right?
Yeah.
These like traditional investors and traders and whatever who hate Bitcoin, they're all convinced it's going to zero now.
Oh, well.
And like, this is a liquidity withdrawal period. And so like globally, there's going to be a lot of things that go down. I mean, like Netflix is down 60% for the year. Carvana's down
ridiculous
10%, and Facebook's down more than 50%. It's not like it's just Ethereum or just Dogecoin or just Bitcoin. Like a lot of these things are all sort of tied up together in a lot of ways. But these traditional people, they look at the way it trades. They look at the fact that it's down, whatever it is, 60, 70% this year. And they say it's going to go to zero, but they also forget that Amazon went down 60 or 70% a few times, right? And if you had sold Amazon every time or thought it was dead every time it went down 60%, you never would have, been able to hold it for the last 20 years. So, and most people didn't, right? Like, let's just be honest. Like most people are not long-term investors.
Exactly.
They're speculators, they're traders. They want to be up every day.
Want to get rich quick.
They want to get rich quick. They're kids with ADD, right? I just said that on Twitter. There's a lot of kids with ADD, and for whatever reason, they all hang out on Twitter. And so if you use Twitter too much, it's honestly hacking your brain into believing that trading is a smart way to make money, right? And that degenning behavior is a great way to live. And like some of these people on Twitter celebrate behaviors that are really, really self-destructive.
Absolutely.
And look, I'm not immune to it. I love to joke in that style. But if you look at the way I actually invest, I'm like, I couldn't be more polar opposite away from that. Like I don't invest like that at all. I don't trade in and out. I don't use leverage. I don't do like degen stuff with perps. Like I'm not constantly trading tickers, right? Like I like to find high quality assets and try to buy them as cheap as possible and then hold them for a decade or more. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that anymore.
Exactly. Everyone wants to get rich quick. Everyone wants this instant gratification. And listen, I get it. When, in 2020, even when Bitcoin first like crossed 10K, it was starting to pop off. There were a ton of alts going 100x, 200x, just ridiculous numbers. And people just got a lot of hype. They got into a lot of trouble because, as soon as things pump, they can also dump. So you have to just be very mindful. What actually took you so long to get into crypto, like into Bitcoin? What was like that part of doing your own research that really said, okay, maybe Bitcoin's not like a .com bubble stock. This is actually worth my time?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it was a much longer journey than it should have been. But I didn't buy Bitcoin until early 2017.
So that was like 5 years.
And I had just had a liquidity event in 2016, so I had a lot of cash, and I was not aggressive enough, right? Like I could have put a lot more.
That's what we all say, fam.
At that time. But I don't regret anything about what I've done because, I feel like to become the best investor, you have to, make some mistakes, right? You can't.
Absolutely.
Nobody's perfect. Nobody walks on water in investing. The learning process for me is the next time I see something that is interesting, right, but I'm not ready to invest heavily into it, is to take a placeholder position, because once you take a small position in an asset that you're interested in, it sort of encourages you to do more research. And so that's kind of what happened. Like I bought a little bit of Bitcoin and then I started studying it more. And sort of candidly, the only way that I kind of kept my head in the game in 2018 was I was running this data company selling data to crypto hedge funds. And so all throughout that bear market period because Bitcoin was just down all of 2018.
Yeah.
It was a brutal year to be
hard.
an entrepreneur. But I was talking to crypto hedge funds every day during that year. And so it forced me to keep re-underwriting Bitcoin in my head, like keep re-underwriting Ethereum, keep understanding like what's going on. And so come December of that year, I had just come from a party in New York. I was down in Tribeca at this like big crypto party. And everybody was partying, but there was also like people sitting on the sides depressed because Bitcoin was at like 3,500 at that point. And like I could see people's lives sort of flashing before their eyes. And on the plane ride home, I started buying Bitcoin. I was sitting up in like 1C and my friend was in 1D. And I showed him, I'm like, I'm buying 3 Bitcoin. I'm buying 3 more Bitcoin. I'm buying 5 more Bitcoin. And I just started buying Bitcoin in the 3,000. I'm like, it just feels like from a sentiment standpoint, like, Pomp and some of these other influencers were saying Bitcoin was going to go to 1,500. I think it was Tone Vays was one of the other ones. And every time this happens, the influencers, like they flip too bearish right at the bottom. People are too exuberant at the top. It happens every single time, right? Yes. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to start buying. And I wasn't really using Twitter then. I didn't start really using Twitter until last summer. I had a Twitter account, but I never really posted on there. People are like, where did you come from? You're not in crypto. Like, why did you just show up? I'm like, no, dude, I've been here for 5 years. I just didn't Twitter until I left Nighting in sort of the summertime of last year. Wow. So that's how I kind of got into it, through running the company. And then by the end of 2018, I started to more aggressively allocate. So I did catch kind of the bottom nicely in 2018. I'm not saying that that's my claim to fame because that's not what I do, right? I'm really more interested in how long I can hold it. Yeah. But some of those Bitcoin that I bought for 3,200, 3,500, 3,800, I'm still going to have. Absolutely. Right, in 10 years, whatever it's trading at that time. And my hope is that it'll be trading between, call it 500K and $1.5 million, somewhere in that range.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I really like what you're talking about with the hype. I remember when, Bitcoin was around 60K, everyone was laser eyes going to 100. And then, like how you were talking about, everyone gets bearish at the bottom. Do you think that maybe that's what's occurring now with Bitcoin? I think it was under 20 before. And I know it hit 17. I think what was the low? 17.5. And everyone's now calling, like Richard Hart, a bunch of people are calling for 10.5K, 11K. Do you think that this is that type of situation where maybe people are just calling, the pre-bottom when we already saw the bottom? And we could have a big pump now? Like, do you think this is a similar situation?
There's so many cross currents right now because you have like the Fed and these central banks withdrawing liquidity.
Yes.
Globally, we have like the end of a 40-year bond bull market. We have supply chain issues related to COVID that are still being rectified. And then we have kind of higher debt levels broadly than we've ever seen. And so there's all these, at the same time, there's more liquidity than there's ever been, right? Like cryptos and Bitcoin specifically, right? Like is much more developed than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And so I do think people generally are being too bearish, right? Like I think if you have a long, like at your age, there's no point to get sucked into that because you are going to be alive in 60 years or 80 years, right? And so like all the money is going to be made in figuring out what are the assets you want to hold for the next 20 or 30 years, not which ones you want to hold for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so a lot of this short-term type of stuff, like even if somebody's right that Bitcoin goes to 12,000, it actually won't matter at all if it eventually goes to 1 million. The only 100%. Thing that matters at 1 million is how many Bitcoin do you have. And the reality is that most people who are trading between 18 and 16 and 22 and 20 are not going to have the most Bitcoin because they're going to convince themselves that they're smarter than they actually are. They're going to convince themselves they can trade in and out. And so the bottom will come and they'll still be waiting for a lower low. If it goes to 12, they'll say it goes to 8. If it goes to 8, they'll say it'll go to 4. Right? And they may say it's going to go to 12 right now and it never goes to 12, right? It might go to 14 or it might go to 16.2 or it might bounce above 17. Who knows? The point is, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is when it gets to 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, how many Bitcoin do you have at that time? And I'm highly confident the people that are tweeting stuff right now and the little furry penguin traders and stuff that anons or whatever that are going to tell us where the bottom is, like, I just don't think it matters. Like, I think it's a cute little game that kids with ADD play, but it has nothing to do with long-term value creation, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you. No hate to the traders, because like I love my traders. I have a lot of trader friends. A lot of them are doing well, but man, as a teenager, as someone that's like in this to stay and not to try to make money right now, I'm more concerned over how much Bitcoin I have. You know, it's not even like the long-term like trading value, because what if you can't trade, right? Because we're hearing about CBDCs incoming within the next year. So why don't we focus, instead of price, the revolution that we're a part of, and focusing on, oh, hey, like I need to have money that's my money, it's money that's accessible by me, and I don't have to rely on anybody else. I think that's really getting lost right now.
And that's what most of the people that are truly focused on the fundamentals of Bitcoin are focused on, including the so-called maxis and the fundamentalists, who I don't believe I'm one of those, right? Because I'm just an investor who happens to like Bitcoin a lot, thinks Bitcoin has a place in everybody's portfolio. It's something that you want to buy and hold for a long period of time. But I don't think if you buy a dividend paying stock that makes you a bad person. No. Right? Or if you buy Ethereum, that makes you a bad person. Or if you buy real estate. I mean, look, there were some major toxic Bitcoin maxis who literally like attacked me last summer saying, how dare you own anything else? How dare you invest in mining stocks? How dare you do this and that or whatever? One of them even made fun of me for talking about Bitcoin mining stocks, but only having like 1% of my portfolio exposed to them. What? That actually looks really stupid now. And there was actually somebody who came out and said, hey, I sold, one of these maxis came out and said, I sold some Bitcoin, and people are like beating up on him. And honestly, it's kind of fair game because he was yelling at people last year for not owning enough Bitcoin. And it's like, well, no, everybody, there's a right amount of Bitcoin to own for you. It's a personal decision. It's an asset allocation decision. And if you get over levered or if you get overexposed, you're going to make a mistake. People who, I learned this the hard way over the last 20 plus years of investing. When you use margin, right? When you use leverage, when you use options, when you're overexposed to something, you are prone to making emotional decisions. And so the right amount of Bitcoin to own, or any asset to own, is the amount of the asset you can own where you're not overly greedy and you're not overly fearful. If you're losing even 20 minutes of sleep at night, if you're waking up nervous about the price, if you find yourself checking the price more than you would otherwise, then you own too much. And that's it. That's the only heuristic you need to use. You don't need to listen to some maxi tell you how much Bitcoin you need to own, right? Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I think, the whole premise of crypto, this whole premise of the space is to choose what you want to do, to exit one system, enter another, and a free system where, yeah, if I want to buy Bitcoin and stick with that, sure. If I want to stick with Litecoin or stick with ETH or buy all of them, who cares? It's my decision, right? And, I don't know. A lot of people labeled you as a Bitcoin maxi. I was like, like looking about like, certain articles and stuff, and people were saying you were a maxi. And I was just like, that's weird. And then we talked about before the show, how that's not true. And you said something that stuck out to me, which was, you really can't control what people write about you, which makes me think of the FUD with crypto and how people in the mainstream media are kind of attacking Bitcoin, attacking crypto for various amounts of crazy, stupid reasons. And we can't really control what they say. Like Bitcoin can't control what they say. You can't control what people say about you. So like, I think, why don't people carry that thought into doing their research into Bitcoin, or into you even, and be like, maybe that's not true because someone wrote it,
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing media work for a long time. I think I told you before the show that I think my first Wall Street Journal quote was like 2008 or 2009 or something. Like the first time I went on CNBC, it was like 2010. I'm an old guy. And so I've just learned that like you can shape the media, you can try to control the narrative, but at the end of the day, you're not fully in control. And you can, of course, never control what people say about you, what people think about you, what people write about you. Some billionaires try to by suing or threatening to sue people who say stuff about them or write about them. And you see some examples of that in crypto, right? People getting sued, like Peter McCormick and Hodlonaut, who called Craig Wright a scammer and all that. And that happens. Like people, even BitBoy the other day had to withdraw a lawsuit after a bunch of public pressure because you just look like a douche if you use the legal process to attack people.
Yeah.
But back to your point though, you can't control anything that someone says or does, right? And so if you spend time trying to do that, you're going to be a miserable person. And as it relates to Bitcoin, you either believe in the game theory of what Bitcoin is or not. And so if you really understand what Bitcoin is, then the Bloomberg can write and Wall Street Journal can write as many more negative articles on Bitcoin as they want, and it's not going to make a difference at all. Because if the game theory plays out the way that we think it will, then Bitcoin's just going to get bigger over time. It's going to soak up some of these other weaker assets. It's going to soak up liquidity. More people are going to use it in the emerging world. I see it right now. Institutions like BlackRock, literally just a few weeks ago, BlackRock announced like, hey, we're really coming in. It's like everybody forgot that because of macro. All of a sudden, short-termism, right?
Yep.
Franklin Templeton is launching their Bitcoin and Ethereum separately managed accounts with Eaglebrook Advisors, where I'm on the board, right? And that was a deal that I was pushing, obviously, inside of Eaglebrook to get that done because, getting a top 10 or top 20 global asset manager with more than $1 trillion under management to start actively recommending these products to retail investors and advisors is going to be really good. But these are long duration plays. Like these things play out over a decade. And the stuff we talk about on Twitter is like, what did Barry say about what kind of week it's going to be this week? And it's like, it's cute and it's fun. And like, we're all having fun with that. But I do think a lot of people are like missing the forest for the trees, right? They're like looking at some of the stuff that's happening today, last week, next week, and they're forgetting about these longer duration, longer cycle type of things that are happening with firms like BlackRock, which are going to lead sort of invariably to a higher price, no matter how many negative articles are written about Bitcoin.
I 100% agree. And one of the things that bothers me is like these dumb little rumors, right? Like, oh, Bitcoin is used for criminals. That's already FUD, that's debunked and that they really don't bring up anymore. But I know you're into mining a little bit and there's a big mining discussion going on in the chat right now. Why do you think the FUD keeps coming out about Bitcoin mining and proof of work? Like there's a huge attack on proof of work right now. And I don't understand why.
Why? I mean,
the environmental issue, but there, I don't really think there is a significant environmental issue when Bitcoin incentivizes renewable energy. So that's where I'm kind of lost here.
Yeah, I agree, but that's because you already know. you've already done the work. I mean, the reality is like most people haven't done that work, and so they're susceptible to narratives. Look, there's so many other worse polluting industries that nobody wants to talk about, right? There are so many other ways that we're using energy, right? That are sometimes wasteful that people don't want to talk about. And so some of it's just like, hey, if I don't use Bitcoin, then I think everybody else using Bitcoin is wasteful, right? Like if some people didn't use washing machines because they felt that they could live without a washing machine, then there would be criticism of washing machine usage. But because everybody uses a washing machine pretty much, right? Anybody who matters, because nobody wants to waste time, then we're more than comfortable using energy for that purpose. So I think a little bit of that is going on, right? Like people don't, especially in the US, people don't realize the risk of sort of the Federal Reserve System, the risk of all this debt, the risk of printing all this money, because the distortions are so long, right? Like we're actually going to be dealing with distortions that were created 15 years ago. Like when we first bailed out the auto industry during the Great Recession in 2008, like we did stuff then that are still reverberating through the economy now. We took on debt then that it's never really been paid off, because that's like the dirty little secret. Like you never go backwards whenever you create new debt. You never go backwards whenever you create new spending in a government. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so at some point you blame the politician who's in office at that time, which is a very not nuanced way of looking at it, but this is what people do. But you never go back and say, well, what about all the compounding poor decisions we made over the last 15 years that got us here? So I think that's really what's sort of happening. Like people are not aware in the U.S. of how many things have gone wrong because of our existing monetary system. So they don't think we need Bitcoin. But if this whole system breaks, right, the thing you see right now is people complaining that treasury bonds are performing so badly. Like these traditional investors are like, the correlations that were there for 40 years aren't working anymore. They're like crying in their beers. And it's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? You thought we could just print money forever and take on new debt and hold interest rates at zero, and that the correlations between bonds and stocks and other asset classes would be exactly the same as they're all. Who are you? You like a 3-year-old? And so a lot of this is just like most people don't even now, even though they've heard of Bitcoin, they don't know what it is, and they don't know what it does, and they don't know what it's sort of an alternative to. And so if you ask them, should we use energy for that? They're like, why would we use energy for that? I don't even know why we need it. So some of that just takes time. And so I think I actually applaud a little bit when I see that, because I go, okay, if people are still lacking in understanding of why this is necessary, then we really are early. Yeah. And it's more sort of support for the idea of like $1 million Bitcoin price eventually, because we're at 20,000 and we were at 60, almost 70,000. And you still have basically like a 1% understanding amongst, even in the US, of like what Bitcoin actually is, like at a deeper level.
Yeah.
Right. Not just, hey, it's this thing I trade. It has a ticker BTC and it's $19,000. Like everybody knows that, but most people don't know what Bitcoin does.
100%. I hit the streets all the time. A lot of people do not know what Bitcoin is. A lot of people haven't heard of Bitcoin yet, which is actually insane. Ridiculous. So we're really early. And that's what I tell people all the time. And I like that you brought that point up, because like Bitcoin already made this much of an impact when it's only been around for 13 years. She's a teenager, Bitcoin. She's still like finding herself. She's discovering life. So how could you say that like it's going to go to zero, that this is something that could be stopped? Like Bitcoin is inevitable. No one's stopping Bitcoin. You should be so bullish on it. It's not even funny. That's why like the FUD annoys me. The speculation annoys me. We have to stop these distractions and focus on what's in front of us. And that's like freedom. That's money.
Amen. I think I'm going to go buy more now.
Yes. Let's go. Listen, guys, my wallet's always open. MissTeenCrypto.com has the QR codes. But yeah, like, I don't know. I've been thinking about things in terms of Bitcoin for a long time. I think, people are going to start valuing things in Bitcoin. Do you see more countries joining this El Salvadorian train of, having Bitcoin as legal tender? Because I don't know why more countries aren't following suit. I think maybe that's because of the bear market, but I think maybe when the hype comes back, more countries will jump on board. I don't know why we're so resistant here. Because I don't know.
Look, it takes time,
Yeah.
Like we had MicroStrategy and Tesla and Square, a couple of other companies put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And then we just kind of hit a peak. And then we hit Elon Musk ESG FUD. I mean, Elon Musk is responsible for more Bitcoin mining ESG FUD than any other person in the world, right? Like people forget that. People forget that. And so he kind of put an end to that process this cycle, because people heard that and they said, oh, this is maybe riskier than we would have liked. And so that it'll just take time. Like nobody wants to be the second or third person to like pile in after El Salvador, because there are some questions about just the leadership in El Salvador and like whether or not they're going to allow like a true democracy there long term. Do we want to be supporting like a tyrant of any sort, even if they are pro Bitcoin? And so like you just need time, and you need Bitcoin to continue to proliferate, and eventually other countries, I think, will sort of be forced to come to the table for their own reasons.
Yeah.
Again, that's the game theory. If we're wrong and Bitcoin doesn't work, or that never happens, then we're wrong. But if we're right, then it's sort of going to happen inevitably over time. It's that whole saying of like everything takes longer than you think in the short term. So like as you're looking out, it's like, oh, this is going to take a while. But then as you get further out, it takes less time.
Yes.
So it may seem like an impossibility 4 or 5 years from now, and then in 8 years from now, it just seems inevitable. Like it happens really slowly, and then all of a sudden, right?
Yeah. I think that's kind of just like what the internet was like at the beginning. People were just like doubting the internet. You know, the same type of clips I saw about people like news anchors talking about the internet is exactly how people talk about Bitcoin and blockchain. So it's just like, if that's not a buy signal right there, of course, not financial advice for you friends out there, but if that's not a buy signal right there, I don't know what is. During this bear market, I've seen, you know, people like Jim Cramer go on the news and be like, you know, it's not even worth reporting on anymore. Crypto's dead. LOL. Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, what are you talking about, guys? Like, that's why like the reverse Jim Cramer memes come in, because it's just like opposite trade what the media says, and it's just like I've seen that myself. That's just proven true. You cannot listen to anybody but yourself, and I think that's like, you know, the point I was trying to make before when I was bringing up the FUD. Like, trust yourself. Do your own research. You don't know, you know, the wrong facts people are saying about people like Mike or things like Bitcoin. People have said things about me that aren't true. But I can't control that. Just gotta stick to your guns, man.
They always will. They always will. It's never going to stop, which is why I just have fun, right? I'm going to keep having fun. Keep having fun on Twitter. I'm going to keep saying whatever I want. I'm going to shit post. I'm going to try to create memes. I've literally been writing tweets recently with the sole purpose of seeing if I can get other people to copy pasta them.
Yes.
So I pretend like I write in a language that I think people will think is silly. And then they take the bait, and then they write 100 versions of my tweet. Like I did a butler one, I did like a mechanic one, I did this one on Ethereum that got quoted in Seeking Alpha. Every single person I've spoken with in the last 24 hours is trying to dump their ETH position at any price. Nobody wants to participate in a system controlled by wealthy devs who can change the rules at the drop of a hat. The selling is relentless, bloodbath, right? And literally the whole thinking of that tweet was that maybe I could get the ETH people to write like BTC versions of that and copy, but it went totally nuts. And I totally took off. So, you know, you got to have fun with it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, come up with your own formats. Like it's going to be a long bear market, so you might as well enjoy it.
Listen, man, say what you want. And you've been saying what you want about a lot of things, whether that's, you know, shit posting or just having, you know, life. You talk about people too. Like, you're not afraid to come after some people and be like, yo, you're doing something wrong and you're doing something wrong, especially when these people that you call out have quite the big community.
Yeah. And specifically, you know, obviously Alex Mashinsky was like my big target for months and months and months. And there were other people that were skeptical of him. And I remember I had one private conversation with somebody who gets credited somewhat with calling that out. But like when I spoke to this person, he basically said, Mike, I don't know, like it might fail. And I'm like, no, it's 100% going to fail. Like I've seen some of the numbers, like I understand what their business model is. This thing is going to fail. And that's when I really started to go nuts. After Luna, I said, Celsius is going to be the next Luna.
I remember that.
Basically a certainty. And so I feel like if I don't do that on Twitter, what am I using my time for? Like, I don't want to be on Twitter and not actually call that stuff out. And then of course I have to talk about Hex, because Richard Hart is maybe the most talented, clever scammer. And I don't want to give him too much credit because he loves this, but he may be one of the most talented scammers of all time. Like he really is that devious and that clever. He designed something that it's like candy for poor people. Like they cannot resist this thing, and like taps into the endorphins and the dopamine receptors in their brain, like in a way that's just perfect. And so he's convinced them all that they're actually going to make money on something that literally is guaranteed to go zero. I'm not going to mince any words. Hex is worthless. It's going to be worthless 100 times out of 100. I say that with the same certainty I said about Celsius. It may take longer because of the way it's designed. It's designed to get people to lock up their tokens, which removes sell pressure in the short run. But there's no value creation there. It doesn't create anything. It literally just prints more, and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier from a price perspective over time because there's more and more tokens. So the market cap just keeps getting bigger. So anyway, I'm never going to stop doing that. I think Richard Hart is hilarious as a person. He can't hurt me because I would never buy any of his scams. But so I have to be careful, because while I enjoy bantering with him and making fun of him and calling him out as a scammer, I don't want to do too much advertising for him, because literally there's some people who will listen to like a really well framed explanation of why Hex is a scam, and then they'll run out and buy it. And
Yeah,
so it's like
just
there's
for
this
the meme.
balance. Yeah, there's just
Yeah.
like this balance. Like I want to call out scams, but I also don't want to direct people to them. So I have to figure out what that balance is.
Absolutely. Very, very nicely said. I mean, listen, if you're going to do something, then do it. You know what I mean? Like, if you have something on your mind, then say it. Because who's really losing here? Say what you want. I'm with you, Mike. I respect your spice because, we talked about before, like people self-censor sometimes. I mean, maybe I do that once in a while because I'm just like, I don't want to start issues. But at the same time, sometimes you need to say what you need to say. This week, if you listen to my Twitter Spaces, I got spicy in Twitter Spaces. I said what I wanted to say this week. And you know what? It felt
Boom.
good. It felt good. So you know
That's
what?
awesome.
I'm gonna keep doing that. And just like how I just keep doing, my thing here. A lot of people told me, don't do that. Don't do crypto. Get out of there. No social media for you. And I was like, peace. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. But yeah, I respect you, Mike. I really, really do. What do you think is one thing that people really need to know right now? Especially during the bear market, you've seen multiple, bear markets, bull markets, whether that's in traditional finance, crypto. What do you think people need to know right now?
I mean, the number one thing in these environments is to create kind of a relaxed, comfortable headspace.
Absolutely.
However you do that, right? So for me, I run every day, right? I take a significant amount of time to just read and do things that I enjoy doing, see friends, spend time with my wife and my dog, et cetera. Because the biggest risk during these kind of down periods is that people get depressed. They over rotate, they overreact, right? They over trade. And so you really, more than anything, forget about the markets, forget about Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, and just like find your happy place. Because if you can't do that, almost all the decisions you make during this period are going to cost you over time. I've never seen anybody who's flustered, emotional, angry, greedy, not well slept, not exercising, eating poorly, et cetera. I've never seen anybody like that make good decisions consistently. And that's all good investing is over time. It's mostly, honestly, more than anything, it's mostly avoiding big mistakes. So like trading on leverage right now, right? Really bad idea.
Yeah.
Big shorts, for example, like saying, oh, Bitcoin's definitely gonna go to 12. I'm gonna go big short. Well, guess what? You're gonna get squeezed. The moment you get in big size, you get short, the market's gonna go against you and you're gonna get stopped out, right? Like it's just sort of like the way markets work. So you just want to avoid all of that and you want to find your happy place. I don't feel any emotion right now at all about the market, right? That's taken me many, many years to get to that point. And of course I have my routine for myself of how I get myself in the right mind frame. But as long as you don't have any emotions about it, you'll generally make pretty good decisions. If you get emotional, you're almost guaranteed to lose money.
I like that. Don't trade with emotions. Don't invest your emotions. Invest your dollars, but not too many dollars as to where you'll lose it all. Be responsible, my friends. Do your own research. Mike, like, you are so insightful. I gotta have you back because I feel like I barely talked about anything with you, yet we've been here for almost an hour. So thank you for coming and hanging out with me. Thank you for taking the time out. Is there any last words you would like to share with the chat? This could be something on your mind that's about crypto, about life, about, the weather outside, about the mountains. What would you like to say to people? It could be about New York steak, whatever you want.
No, I would just honestly say be yourself and don't listen to what anybody else tells you should be doing or eating or thinking or whatever. So if you want sushi tonight, even if you want Nobu, which is my least favorite sushi place in the world, I think it's the most overpriced sushi on the planet.
Ooh.
It's a scene. You go there to have a cocktail and maybe the miso cod. But if you want to go to Nobu tonight, don't listen to me. You go, right? If you want to go someplace better, don't listen to me. Go, right? So that's what I'd say more than anything is just go enjoy your life. Go touch grass, as they say.
Yes, touch grass. I say that all the time. Yeah, go Mike. Guys, listen to him. I say to touch grass all the time, but he actually said it too. So that means you really got to go outside and touch grass. Where can everyone find you, Mike? Because I know I put your Twitter link in the description, but is there anywhere else that you would like people to visit?
I try not to be found, just generally. But on Twitter, I'm just at Mike Alfred.
Okay,
So.
got it. I'll drop your link again in there. I know I dropped it a few minutes ago, but I'm going to do it again because you guys got to see this man's tweets. It's always so good. You're always on the edge of your seat. You're like, oh, is he trolling? And does he mean this one? Ooh, what are the comments saying? There's always something good. There's always something spicy happening with Mike. But thank you so much again for taking the time out, for hanging out with me. I know the chat is like so happy right now. Thank you guys in the chat for hanging out with me. I'm actually going to be in Boston this week. So guys, if any of you guys are in Boston, or Boston as they like to say out there with their coffee, guys, come hang out with me in Boston, bostonblockchainweek.com. If anything, go in my group chat on Telegram. I'll give you some information. Come hang out with me. We'd love to see you guys. I'm heading out there tomorrow. So have a good day, everybody. Enjoy your week. I will be back next week with the Miss Teen Crypto Show. Thank you again, Mike, for hanging out with me. If you guys enjoy the show, please hit the like, subscribe, share the stream out with friends, comment after the show is over if you liked it, what you liked most about the show, ideas on who you want to see next, what you thought about, the FUD out here, or on Mike Alfred's tweets, because, they're pretty spicy. Have a great day, everyone. A happy Monday. And as always, don't forget to stay zesty. Peace.
Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Miss Teen Crypto, spreading crypto adoption, showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Gen Z needs to be included, it's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, zesty, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z, about to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Miss Teen Crypto, I'm never backing